presentation is called Sustainable Transportation Choices. It's one I've done a few years, and I've tried to modify it and update it. But to introduce myself, my name is Eric Foresman. I am an energy engineer at the University of Iowa, a Green Building Council Leadership in Energy and Efficiency Design. And I'm also a professional energy manager. But the thing that I am most concerned with is transportation, which really isn't in my field, but is what I love to look into. And that will become obvious shortly. So in 2002, I used about 630 gallons of fuel to get around. And at that time, well, 2001, when the planes hit the Trade Center, I'd just become Alpha Company commander in a reserve CB battalion, and the preparing to go overseas and go to war. Well, it was an interesting situation. We were set to actually go fight terrorism, and then all the money for that dried up, and we started going to fight a resource war in Iraq. And at that point, I figured there's got to be a better way, because I knew how much this was going to cost, and I knew how much it would cost to not be dependent, addicted to oil. And so the first thing I did was I bought an electric car, but I started to experiment with how I could personally reduce my own oil addiction. And it took me a few years, but I got down to 69 gallons a year, and I've stayed under 100. And I'm pretty much convinced now that we have everything we need. We just need to do things a bit differently. And one of the things that I like to go into at the beginning is we have so many problems right now that it can often be overwhelming. Oh, but I've got this up, yeah. So we've got, if you've read Jared Diamond's book on collapse, how societies choose to fail, the end of suburbia, who killed the electric car, any of these can just floor you. And most of these were done before the economic crisis, where our financial basis was undercut. And I don't know if anybody else had a bank account that they couldn't access for a month or so after, and they thought. I was personally invested in a Ameritrade, and had an online account that was all federal treasuries. But it turned out that account was actually held by another bank, which was held by Bears and Stearns, and even I was like 3 or 4 banks removed from any connection to what was happening, and yet I was affected. It's all interconnected, and an integrated approach to this is what we really need to be able to get some traction. So the concept of sustainability is really a brilliant marriage of the idea of development, or how to look at poverty and get everybody on the planet what they need to survive, and to do that with a growing population without undercutting the environmental systems that support the population. And so this was the Brundtland Report in '87 that really got everybody at the UN together and said, we can't support development that destroys our environment. And I mean, we can see China is developing, and every year they're putting in more coal plants than we have in our entire country. And so this didn't catch on in '87 like it could have. The other side of that is, a lot of times with car standards and those type of things, some places it is catching on, and we're really doing a good job of developing smart. But it's not really a new philosophy. If you go back to the Iroquois, they had the 7th generation concept, where the decisions that leaders made should take into account the effects on at least 7 generations. The other way to think of it is it's almost a civil rights movement for future generations. Sustainability and any sustainability laws that come on are a little bit like the civil rights movement, in that we are starting to value people who weren't valued. And right now, future generations aren't given their fair share. And the way I like to think about this developmentally is thinking about it on 3 levels. You can consider sustainability, or even the ability to care and feel connected to past generations, like you're standing on the shoulder of giants, and future generations holding up those to come, grows in people. And so you have individual sustainability, which is keeping yourself alive, meeting your own needs. Group sustainability, where you care about not only yourself, but your team or your country or the first world or whoever you feel connected to as your tribe. And for this talk, I mostly consider everybody here connected to first worlders. I mean, we are people who've grown up with always having the possibility of owning a personal transportation vehicle. So we're all, if we got here, probably connected in a deep way to the culture that we have right now. And the third level would be planet sustainability. And this is where just being able to do things that are good for everybody and smart for everybody in the first world isn't quite enough, where you start thinking about how can I do things so that if everybody on the planet did the same thing, they could meet their needs. And the idea, because you can't do all of these in every part of your life, is to choose the greatest depth and span, is what I call it. Choose the best for the most. In a consumer culture, we're often trained to try to get the most amount of stuff for the least amount of money. This is a slight switch to try to get the best stuff that benefits not only you, but everybody around you. And so here's a couple examples when it comes to transportation. When you consider the regular old urban assault vehicle, it makes sense on one level of sustainability. I mean, people who drive these things care about their children and want to protect them. And if that's your main focus of concern, it makes perfect sense to wrap them in something big and strong that can get out of ditches. And it just, at this level, the sustainability focuses on a small family. If you care about your family and the rest of the country or the first world, if you want to do something, if you feel that it's not just good enough to focus on myself, but I need to do something that's good for me and good for those around me, you're more likely to just naturally want to pick a car that gets high efficiency. Even if you can afford more, you wouldn't want to burn more than you need so that there's resources left over for other people that you care about. And then the next level is where you start thinking about, okay, what's the next step? What's the step where I can get around? If everybody did the same thing, no matter what their circumstances, we could probably meet everybody's needs. And so this goes beyond in most cases, the privately owned vehicle idea. And I just showed for those who were in here earlier the personal rapid transit, which is a mini light rail, which is a way to share transportation over a lot of people. And so I'm an engineer, and I have spent most of my life working on how to make systems work better. And what was really frustrating to me was you come up with a better idea, and even though it's better on some ways. Maybe it costs a little bit more, and with the way the economics work, it's not quite competitive, and so it doesn't go anywhere. Or it solves a problem that desperately needs solving, but you're the only one, or a very small group of people care about it. So I've worked in this area and wondered why solar systems and those type of things don't often get the traction they need to really gain implementation. And this is the way that I've started to look at it. You need intention, behavioral change. You need the systems in place to do things in a better way, and you need some cultural support. And an example would be riding a bicycle. If you want to ride to work instead of drive to work and pay for a lot of parking, you've got to want to. But if you just want to and don't do anything, you're not gonna make any changes. But if you actually get the bike out of the garage and pump the tires up and get on it, if you change your behavior, you've got a chance. But then if there's no bike trails, or if it's suicide to try to ride, if the systems aren't in place, if you live in a culture where they don't pay attention to street lights, you're probably not going to bike unless you have to. It's not going to be something fun. And then if you get to work and everybody laughs at you because real men drive sports cars and only children ride toys, it's not going to stick either. And so all these 4 pieces need to be in place for a change to really get adopted. So even when we put subsidies behind good new ways to do things, if the culture thinks that it's stupid, it's not going to get done. If behavior change isn't possible, it's not going to get done. And if people don't really have any incentive or real intention to change, it's hard to get anything in place. And so I started looking at it, okay, is what questions do we need to ask when we're making any of these transportation choices? And the first one is, what's the best choice, or the most sustainable choice I could make for meeting my need in this moment? And then the next one would be, so now if everybody did the same thing, would it still be a good idea? And that's the span. And so if everybody bicycled or walked or took public transportation, parking wouldn't be a problem. It would be much better on the environment, and you could get where you needed to go. The systems that are out there would be supported. Bicycling is even more efficient than walking. If you look at all the energy that goes into the food you eat and the amount of energy that you expend walking, a Cambridge study looked at this. It's actually less calories per mile to bicycle than it is to walk. In public transportation, we've got light rail, which is the best. Then buses are next, and airlines are the third choice. And the way I look at that is passenger miles per gallon. So even though a bus only gets 3 miles per gallon, if you get 90, let's see, where's the bus? If you get 9 people in there, you can take the mileage times the number of people that you're getting to where you're going. So that's an average of 98 miles per gallon. Passenger rail, 182. Air travel is 66. So it's not, for a long haul, it still makes sense. It would be the same as everybody taking a trip in a car that got 66 miles per gallon. And even short haul, if you've got, a full, well-used airplane, it's not that bad. But by far the best is rail. And this idea this is light rail, where you only have 4 people in the car, and instead of stopping at every rail stop, it can go